I won't guarantee you would magically turn into Namita Dubey after watching this episode, but let's discuss how to get into the habit of reading. Welcome to the Geek Chic podcast. I'm your host, Roshni, and here I exchange ideas and thoughts. Let's discuss how to develop a habit of reading in this episode. All my childhood, I despised reading books because my parents used to nag me into reading. For me, reading meant studying, which I disliked as well. And also the fact that both of my parents were voracious readers, and like many other kids, whatever parents do is uncool for us, right? Or am I the only one? I don't know. But oh boy, I was so wrong. Later, I did engineering, and the people around me didn't read much. And obviously, the curriculum does not push you into reading as compared to someone who is in the arts. And that's why I never got into reading in my early 20s as well. Until one day, I just saw this book lying around in my mom's book collection. The cover had lotuses on it, and the author's name was Arundhati Roy. I was familiar with that name and how controversial she is, so I was quite intrigued. The only book that could turn me into a reader was The God of Small Things, and I just want to talk about it today. Now, in the intro, I mentioned a name, Namita Dubey, and she has recently caught my intrigue. So, if you're not familiar with her, she's an actor who mainly stars in Bollywood and in Hindi web series. But now she's getting known to be a book talker and for her immaculate vocabulary. I often see people in the comments calling her Shashi Tharoor's daughter, which is so apt indeed. There is this podcast episode with Namita Dubey on Chalchitra Talks, and I think it's over 2 hours, and I listened to the entire thing. So they are basically discussing about books, obviously, and how to get into books. They have covered a lot of great points in that podcast, so I would highly recommend you to listen to that podcast. And there were a few like standout points for someone who's a beginner. So first was to read books or articles which are based on your niche of interest. For example, for me, I love fashion, and when I was a child, I used to read a lot of Femina. I mean, yes, I could not afford the outfits mentioned in that magazine, but it used to be super interesting for me to go through all of that. And there were a lot of shocking advice columns as well, at least for that age. But it used to be really fun, and I remember looking forward to the next edition. Also, one more example, I remember enjoying Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, because I was interested in knowing what other teenagers are going through and what they are thinking, as I was a teenager myself. So I remember enjoying it, but now I feel like it's so cringe. But anyways, Other points that were covered in the podcast were starting off with books which are less than 100 pages, and also starting off with reading essays over like a full blown novel. One more thing they covered was audiobooks, but I think it's still different from reading because reading is a very self indulgent activity, because when you read, you can only read, you cannot do something else. But while you're listening to an audiobook, you can do work as well. So I think reading is very different from listening to an audio podcast. Well, that's my opinion. The one point I want to add to this is from my own experience, and that is reading books which you can easily imagine. Okay, let me explain. For me, reading helps you exercise your muscle of imagination. So if you're just starting out, it becomes easier for you to imagine if the story is very relatable to you. For example, a book which is set in your hometown or based on the community you belong to, in those cases, it is very easy for you to picturize the entire thing and connect with it. Now back to The God of Small Things. This story is mainly set in Kerala, and it's based on a Syrian Catholic community, and I belong to that community. When I read that book, it instantly transported me to my grandfather's native place, his Tarwad. When I was reading that book, it had been ages since I visited Kerala. I felt so nostalgic. I could literally smell the book and could feel the humidity in the air. Also, the topics of Catholicism, the influence of clergy, the caste divide, communism instantly reminded me of the stories that my grandmother used to tell me as a child. That's why I could easily immerse myself in the world that Arundhati had built in that book. To wrap this up, I'm not telling you to go and read The God of Small Things. I'm not saying that it's the best book out there. If you are someone who actually wants to get into reading, I would suggest that pick a book which you can easily relate with, and also you can easily imagine the world it has built. With that, please let me know your thoughts, or if you have any other advice that you would like to share in the comments. And like always, being a geek is pretty chic. Good luck.